I'm Tim Brooksbank and I'm here to tell you about the different operating modes of VP-794 and the different ways it's optimised in each mode. Now VP-794 has three operating modes. It can operate as a scalar switcher, which it does out of the box new. It can operate as a projection scaler when it does warping and edge blending, or it can operate as an LED scaler where it can do pixel accurate image resizing to arbitrary sizes. Now we've separate tutorials on LED and on projection, so today I want to tell you about scalar switcher mode. So the big difference with scalar switcher mode versus the other modes is how the scaler is optimised. In the projector mode, the scaler is optimised for warping and blending and for the ability for it to change its calibration on the fly automatically for warp and blend when you change input channels or when you change resolutions. In LED mode, it's optimised for pixel accurate resizing to suit the LED screen, and also in projector and LED mode, the scaler is optimised for very low video delay or low latency through the scaler, which is so important for large venue projection and for large venue LED video wall applications. But there's a third application for VP-794, which is as a very high quality flexible scalar switcher, when the most important thing is not only the picture quality and the scaling capability, but the ability to switch inputs cleanly. And it's important that you have it in scalar switcher mode for that to happen. So I'm going to show you how to do that and what the differences are. So in LED mode or projector mode, VP-794 is optimised for low video delay or low video latency rather than clean switching. This means that when you change input channels, the output has to resync because the vertical sync of the output is dependent on the vertical sync of the input. That minimises video delay and ensures no tearing of the picture if the display is in camera, on set, on a TV set or at a concert. But it doesn't give clean switching. So I'll just demonstrate. So for now I'm in LED mode, I haven't resized, you've got a full screen picture. I'm currently showing HDMI, and when I switch to composite video, it seems to take quite a long time and the picture will not be clean. So we've gone to the other input channel here. We're now on composite video. And if I go back to HDMI, you see there was a flash. That was the scalar resyncing to maintain low latency. So the switchover wasn't clean. We got a flash or a glitch changing between input channels. How bad that appears depends on the monitor or the LED screen or the projector. Now that's clearly not desirable in a scalar switcher application. In an edge blending situation or geometry correction on a large projector, it doesn't matter because in that kind of situation you'll have a constant input, or if the input is being switched, it will be switched by something else such as a vision mixer or some kind of vision switching matrix elsewhere. Also in LED, likewise, you'll be fed from a vision mixer or you'll be fed from some other kind of scalar switcher which gives you a constant source. But when VP-794 is actually the switcher as well as the scalar, then clearly that's not acceptable and you need a clean switch. Now there are two ways of achieving this. The first is to give an external Genlock sync or Genlock reference to VP-794. That tells VP-794 to maintain a constant output which is locked to the Genlock reference, and that's the correct way to get clean switching if you're in a television studio environment, a concert environment, or some other big event, maybe where there are television cameras and there is a Genlock sync run round to different devices. But what about if I'm in a smaller environment? Perhaps I'm in a house of worship or some education environment or something else where I don't have Genlock sync and a full broadcast infrastructure. In that situation, what I need to do is I need to put the VP-794 into scalar switcher mode so it knows it has to switch cleanly. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the output menu, display type, and I'm going to change the application. Here it shows LED. I can have projection, but I'm going to go for scalar switcher. And I'll show you a little trick here as well. Rather than having to go back to the menu button, I can just push the jog wheel to select what I want. Neat little feature which lets me get through the menu quicker. Now when I make this change, the scalar reboots. This is because it actually loads different firmware. It has 3 different sets of firmware depending on the operating mode. It's literally loading a different app. You wouldn't do this live, you'd only do this at setup or install time, so the fact it takes half a minute, it doesn't really matter. So we've now come back up in the scalar switcher mode, and note now at the bottom, rather than saying I/O locked, it says free run. That means that the scalar switcher, the VP-794, it's generating the output sinks, which means the output is constant when I change inputs. I'll just show you a couple of key points on the menu. So again, in the output menu, in the display type, you can see one of the menu items is frame rate. Now if it's set to auto, it will automatically hop between different frame rates depending on the input content. That's good for motion but bad for switching. So for clean switching, I should either select 60 or 50, depending upon the operating environment and the frame rate I want out of it. Today I'm going to select 60. So that has now fixed the output frame rate as 60. That means the output frame rate will be constant even when I change between inputs with different frame rates. The VP-794 will now convert all its input signals to 60. Some of you who know a little bit more may say, is it running 60 or is it running 59.94? And that's a very good question. And the answer is it depends on the mode you select. If you selected an output resolution, which is a SMPTE mode, so a video mode, such as 1080p, 1080i, 720p, 480i, it will run genuine 59.94 broadcast standard. If you select a mode though which is a computer format, such as XGA, SXGA, wide UXGA, it knows that should be a 60 Hz mode, not a 59.94 Hz mode. If, however, you do connect a Genlock signal, the Genlock signal will override that and the Genlock frame rate will determine what frame rate you get. So if we go back to the scaler here, you can see the frame rate is set to 60 Hz, and there's another menu item here called I/O lock, and this shows Genlock as the selected option. Now you can see in here, if I go in that menu item, auto means run I/O lock or Genlock. Genlock means just run Genlock, source means force to run I/O lock, and off means force to free run. Normally in scalar switcher mode you would leave it in Genlock. That means if you connect a Genlock reference it will use it and clean switch with that, but otherwise it will clean switch by generating its own output timings. If you select auto or you select source, the input switching is not clean. So now we're in Genlock mode and we haven't got a Genlock signal, so it's free running, which means the 794 is in control of the output timings. I'm currently showing HDMI, as you can see here. So now if I press the CV1 button to select Composite Video 1, the scaler will switch and it will switch cleanly to Composite Video 1. You saw there was no glitch on the picture this time. I'll go back so you can see again. It will fade down to black, it will change the new input, and it will fade back up from black to the picture with no glitch. One other little trick to show you, just so you know. On the menu, you can also choose how that transition works. If I go into the System menu, and I go to Input Configuration, I can go to Switching. And the switching menu item lets me choose how the transition occurs in scalar switcher mode. By default I have a fast fade. I can have a slow fade, which fades to black slowly and then fades up from black slowly. I can have blank, in which case the picture cuts to black and then cuts to the new picture. Or I can have freeze, when it does a last frame hold of the original input, then cuts cleanly to the new input. Most people prefer fast fade, which is the default. So once more for you, we're in the fast fade mode. I'm currently on HDMI. I can go cleanly, you see, with the fade to black and the fade back up to the picture, to my composite video, or cleanly back to HDMI. And there we are. And that's how to use a VP-794 as a scalar switcher.